I'd like to welcome everybody to the session. I'm John DeGennaro from Baldwin Wallace University, and joining me today are Connie King, the director of our Professional Development Center, as well as John Washington, our presenter today. I want to thank everybody for coming and also let you know that this session is being recorded for those of you that couldn't attend or that have to drop off. We'll be sending out this recording after we finish. This is a short webinar, and we will be reserving about 5 to 10 minutes at the end for questions. So we're happy to engage the audience and the group, and we will be just asking you to raise your hand, and we'll unmute your microphones if you have any questions as we approach the end of the session. So this is the exciting start to our new webinar series, and really we are going to be presenting a number of topics throughout the rest of 2020 that really helps businesses and industries understand the uncertainty that's happening around the globe. We hope to connect you with not only ourselves at Baldwin Wallace University, but other experts at the university, as well as our very long-standing partners. So this is the first seminar in the series, and this is Energy into Uncertainty, Steps for Business Continuity and Supply Chain Resiliency. So we really want to make sure that we understand that even though there is massive disruption happening in the United States and around the world, that really your skills can build and your capabilities will follow around how to understand what that growth mindset can be, even in light of these very, very difficult times. John Washington is our presenter today from the Innovation Garage. He has 25 years of entrepreneurial product, process, service, and supply chain solution delivery. We're very excited to have him here. John is a long-standing partner with Baldwin Wallace University and the Center for Professional Development. We are really excited that he's here today. We've had a number of excellent engagements with John over the years and have impacted thousands of individuals that have participated in his sessions and webinars. So John, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you take this slide and then move into the content as well. John?
Excellent. Thank you, John. Thank you, Connie. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to everyone. The Innovation Garage, founded in 2012. And as John made mention, we've got a great partnership with Baldwin Wallace University. And so what do? We help organizations build programs for capability, front end of innovation, growth, and supply chain. We'll support them in projects for growth. We also support in creating a culture of growth and working in partnership with the professional development team at BW. We work a lot on professional solution development. And so as we get into today's content, we wanted to share some things that were most likely going to be helpful for you and talk about a specific subject today about scenario planning as a focus of the 5 steps that we're doing in our business and our organization, and we're also advising our clients on as well. So with that, we can certainly get into the content for today's program. So thank you, John. All right, so I'm going to share my screen locally here, and we will get started in the content presentation.
Looks great, John. We can see these are interesting times slide.
Excellent. So I appreciate that. Thank you, John. So these are interesting times. And so as we get into this program, we want to spend a little bit of time about what we call energy into uncertainty. And so how we best collectively could serve the community was really what we wanted to do, was share in our partnership with Baldwin Wallace and draw from some practical experience. And so what we kind of see here is just a snapshot of 2 different time periods. So the first one was coronavirus cases in April 2nd. and most recently as of yesterday. And you can see the growth in the numbers. And we really are in an unprecedented time. And so we hope that this event finds you in a situation where you're home, you're social distancing, maybe you're in a reduced work schedule, maybe you've got kids at home, just like we do, that we're working through kind of their education plans and things like that. So we've never really experienced this kind of disruption and uncertainty. And so what we wanted to do was make sure to give you some insights on how best to kind of look at scenarios within your organization. And so when this happens, what we tend to do is what we like to do is draw upon past experience. And so there are activities that our team has been through, as have many of others of you in the industries that you're in. So we've experienced the dot-com bust, September 11th, tsunamis in Japan, the supply chain issues that happened with those things, supplier bankruptcy, labor strikes. And so these are common things that happen in these disruptions. And so it's important to kind of take some basic learnings from all of these things and figure out what we can do to inject resiliency into our business. So what each of these situations really have in common is it's important to really focus not so much on what happens around us or to us, but how are we going to respond and recover and lead others through it. And so one of the key things in all of these scenarios is sometimes we've got to fight this urge or this desire that we sometimes have to do the exact opposite of what everyone else is doing to pull through it. And this means that we're going to have to think about scenarios that are going to be very uncomfortable. But once we put those out on the table and we start to explore those, that really helps us think more about the future, because what we've done is we've done the hard work of what could happen or might happen, and we understand that. And so when we focus on these items, this really helps us to recover from our disruptions much faster. And so when we double down, we can then focus and innovate and execute our way out. And so the 5 steps that we're encouraging of our clients, and in this session as well, is really to look at these kind of 5 steps here. So the first one is protect employees. Make sure that you're following the guidance of your state and local officials on what to do and how to do it. Second step, and this is where we're going to focus today, is set up that cross-functional response team. Focus on scenario and business continuity planning and communication. And we're going to share with you a couple of basic steps as to how to do that and what that might look like. Then you're going to want to work on how we're going to manage cash and ensure that our business has access to the appropriate liquidity. And then there'll be modeling of your sales cycle and what you need to do to stabilize the supply chain. And once you do those things, this is where you have to do the exact opposite of what most folks will do, because the tendency is, hey, we've got to really cut costs and make sure that we're surviving. But really what you want to do is look at how you can focus your energy into your R&D and innovation efforts. And once you've got this plan in place with the first 4 steps, now you're in a good position to look around in the community and figure out what you can do to help and support others in the community. So we're going to focus on scenario 2 here. And with scenario 2, setting up a cross-functional response team and use of scenario planning, note that what we're going to do, these are specific kind of guidelines, and really each organization is going to have to look at these elements and figure out what a detailed analysis of your very specific situation is going to be best to manage. But again, we wanted to share some methods that will help you at least jumpstart that and get started. So as we think about thinking of that cross-functional response team, really of these aspects, you've kind of got to think about what are we going to do to coordinate and communicate with all our relevant constituencies. And so whether you're a small business, a mid-market privately held, a large publicly traded, or a nonprofit, you've got to do that coordination and communication across all your constituencies. Make sure your employees' health, welfare, and their ability to perform roles is in place. And that may be some of the folks that we're consulting with are critical to infrastructure manufacturing industries. So they've got to make sure that the health, welfare, and the ability of their employees to perform their roles is there. Then we've got to look at financial stress test modeling. So let's stress the system with these scenarios and think about what we need to do for a contingency plan. Then we've got to get into the supply chain and kind of do monitoring and rapid response, ask our suppliers, how are they doing? What is their financial situation? What are the things that they need from us as a customer that will be able to continue their business? I mean, some examples here might be that if you have the opportunity, you may want to shorten payment terms to help that supplier continue to provide what you need. And then lastly, as I said, we can get into the aspects of helping the community. So the first four steps here are very much like wanting to put our oxygen mask on first and make sure that we're in a good position, understand our situation so that we can help others. And so when you do this, the members of your response team are really going to need to dedicate a lot of their time to the virus response. And you'll be able to call it and dial in and get things kind of in a good cadence after you do that. So when we talk about scenario planning and what that might look like, we've got to run some tabletop exercises for tough decisions. And we've got to run some financial stress tests for all those scenarios. And so it's important then to align all these work streams. And then this is going to give us some immediate actions to take within our organization. Now, we're going to present a process around scenario planning, and it's a very high level overview, and we're going to present some scenarios that we can present to you and say, hey, here are some things to consider in your organization, and give you an overview of how the scenario planning process works here in just a few minutes. So step one is really brainstorming the issues that might be impacting your sector. Obviously, shutdowns, employees working from home, impacts to our sales cycle, order bookings down if you're in an organization that's delivering products or process or services. So you've got to think about what those issues are. And typically here you may get a large list, but you want to try to hone that down to the 3 to 5 most critical things that might be impacting your sector. You're going to cluster those issues into groups. You're going to select typically a few drivers of change, and then you're going to develop that into a 2x2 matrix. And we're going to give you an example of what that might look like. And then you're going to understand each scenario and adjust the strategy accordingly. And this is a continuous process. And so some folks will ask us, well, how often should we be updating our scenario plans? And at minimum, we're going to encourage that you look at factors to do that at least once a week. And some organizations are looking at it sometimes twice a week, depending on what might be happening in their business and the factors that are changing around them. But at the highest level, these are the 6 steps of the process. And we're going to dive into a couple of them and then give you an example of some scenarios here. So why is this such a powerful tool? Well, when it's done right, it can be one of the most sophisticated and elegant techniques in an organization strategy. So what we want to do is make sure that you understand it's a really flexible tool. It helps you with long-term plans. It helps you deal with major and uncertain shifts in organizations. And it'll allow you to develop a pretty resilient strategy and help you test flexibility of your strategy over the outputs that you're developing, and then also the inputs of what's happening around you in today's environment. So just as a bit of context and background, so this helps us deal with major and uncertain shifts in our environment. It allows us to develop a resilient strategy, and it's really structured in a way to help us gain a deeper understanding of the underlying major drivers of change. And it's going to help us understand what we need to do to, pull through a disruption like this. So its roots come from military strategy, and it's really admitting to our colleagues and teams that we can't predict the future. We just can't do it. There's too many uncertainties. But it is an essential tool that helps us understand the evolution of the market. And so here's a couple of pieces of guidance. Extreme scenarios classically are things that are ignored as you do scenario planning. We can see leaders in organizations saying, well, that will never happen. And you can also take a tendency to have a mindset of scenarios are often viewed as this is the right scenario or the wrong scenario. And what we encourage you as you go through this process is there's a lot of gray here. There's not a lot of right and wrong. And I would imagine for everyone that's joined us on the webinar here today, if we'd have asked ourselves, hey, in a 6 to 8 week period, we're all going to be working from home. We're going to see unemployment numbers that we've never seen in the last 50 years, and we're going to be talking about scenario planning on a webinar, we'd have all said there's no way that that's going to happen. So very much push yourself into those places that are going to make you uncomfortable with your scenario planning. But despite these limitations, it's a really, really useful tool for staging point for a strategic discussion. And so again, just to kind of go over those steps, we're going to brainstorm those major issues, right? We want to focus on short-term, medium-term, and long-term horizons. We want to cluster issues into groups and figure out where we've got most uncertainty in our organization. And again, remember, for-profit, nonprofit, this is the same activities that we would recommend that you walk through. So step 3, determine which uncertainties are highly correlated and can be combined. We want to review those things into a 2x2 matrix and then use those to help shape the ongoing strategy. And so we have to get these concepts planned, aligned, and well seated within the organization. And once we do that, the first sessions will take a little bit of time, and it's going to feel, a little bit like you've got, sand in the gears and there's a lot of grinding going on. But once you get some alignment on some scenarios, you can adjust these and update these very, very quickly. So we're going to jump to what does the 2x2 matrix look like for scenario planning. And so really we're looking at the extreme corners of these various scenarios. And it's really best to help us prioritize what issues do we think are going to be most important as we go through the scenario plans. So classically, the matrix looks like this. We establish a couple of things. We think about the various scenarios that we have, and there's typically a optimistic scenario and then kind of a very, very pessimistic scenario. And so when we define the scenarios, it's not meant to really describe the most likely case, but we want to explore what might be. And so the grids really have 2 axes of uncertainty, and it in the scenario that we're going to show you, we've kind of defined them as an example that we've presented and walked through with some clients. So here we go. As far as what these axes of uncertainty looks like, the scenarios have evolved, and you're going to actually see as we started this, 4 to 5 weeks ago, some scenarios have actually changed quite a bit. So here's what they are, and this is kind of how we're looking at this from an operations and a continuity and resiliency perspective. So the first was what we had considered 4 or 5 weeks ago might have been a quick recovery, and that was, hey, we were going to be able to this is going to be a short-term kind of thing. It's only going to last a few weeks, and this coronavirus is assumed to be seasonal. Well, what's proven itself out over the last 3 to 4 weeks is this scenario is likely not one that we're going to see, and it's starting to just get grayed out more and more as we see more data. And we've got 3 others then. We have the scenario of the global slowdown. What this means is over some short duration of time, we'll expect operations to slow down, and typically something that'll be a much shorter time frame. Third scenario is what we call the global recession, and so typically recessions are defined as things that last 18 months or more, and so this can be one of those timetables that we can look at. And again, when we started a few weeks back, we really were trying to avoid the use of the global depression scenario, but we did think that it now warrants some look at as you think about those things. And this is that one scenario in particular that really no one is very comfortable talking about, but it's important to say that, what this means is this would be something that lasts more than 18 months. And so recovery in consumer confidence is pushed out beyond 18 months. So those are the scenarios. And so when we lay these into the matrix, this is kind of what we see is we have 2 axis uncertainty. And so for our organizations, what we can look at on the y-axis is what is our potential impact to revenue in a percentage perspective, or what might be our impact to funding if we're a nonprofit, or donations or contributions is a big portion of our revenue. And then on the x-axis, we've got this axis of uncertainty, which is our length of time. And so, that can look at over a 3-year time period. And so this is an example of how we've given some guidance on the various scenarios to look at. This is not meant to describe the most likely case, but this helps us as a tool to explore the tensions amongst these different types of scenarios. And so one key caveat with this is um, all models are approximations. And so all models are wrong, but some are useful. So remember that what we're saying is, as you look at these models, understand that it's wrong, but it will get more accurate as you have more information. But the key point is to have that information and start to work through that. So what does this look like? Okay, if we were to apply these four scenarios, how does this look and feel? And what want we do within our organization to get some insight from our teams as far as what is the impact to our organization based on these four scenarios? And so a way that we can do this, and an example in which we can do this, is actually what we call a blend of two techniques. The first technique is called Delphi estimating. And that's essentially going out to your teams and getting some data from them about, it could be impact from your sales channel or your order bookings. And you're getting some data and some insights, and you're asking your team members, hey, give us your optimistic, most likely, and pessimistic scenarios. And you can survey your team members and kind of get an insight for what these scenarios might be. And so in this example, what we've said is, hey, we've asked our team members, what is our impact to dollars over this time period? Again, that could be nonprofit funding sources, or that could be revenue shortages, et cetera, changes in the sales and your order bookings. And we also then ask a second question of, all right, how long do you think this will last? And so each of those team members may do some of their own individual research, and they say, hey, we believe the duration of the disruption optimistically is in this top example, 3 months, most likely 6 months. And then a pessimistic duration is 9 months. And so we can use this formula called 3-point estimating, where you're taking the optimistic estimate, 4 times the most likely. And that's what that's doing, is it's weighting the most likely scenario, and you're adding the pessimistic scenario to that. Divide all of those by 6, and you get some examples of some potential calculated durations as far as impact to revenue and duration of the disruption. And so in this possible scenario, as we do that math and we surveyed our team, what we've uncovered is, as we've surveyed the team, we've identified a possible scenario that says, hey, we might have almost a 50% disruption in revenue, and it might last us over 12 months. And so what this means is now we can start to think about tactically, what does that mean for our organization? With a 50% revenue disruption, and it might last us 12 months. Now, what do we do? What kind of action plans do we put in place, and contingency plans? And so remember, this example here, this is an approximation. It's wrong, but it's useful. It's helping us get some energy into the uncertainty and see what this scenario might look like in the future. And so once we do this, there are some key questions that you might want to ask yourselves in your organizations. And so in this example that we've presented, if we have this type of impact to our org, what do we need to do differently? What can we offer in these markets? How might we change our pricing strategy? What other megatrends might impact our organization? Would our channel strategy change? Would our sales and marketing impacts change, and what would that look like? Are there partnerships and alliances or acquisitions that we could look at? And what could our core mission or business become? Because there's going to be some great opportunities to pivot out of that. And there'll be opportunities that come out of this scenario in the future. And so how can we pivot our organization's mission or business to become something new and different? So these would be some examples of key questions as we walk through kind of that scenario planning example. So again, these are the ways to look at some scenarios, and this is some of the guidance that we've shared with our clients, and this is how we're looking at aspects of what our business will look like in the future. Now, not to leave with all bad news, but we want to make sure that, all right, what are the macro trends that we see that are coming? What's the good news that's going to come in the future? Well, the big one is obviously going to be localized manufacturing. And so, with the challenges of supply chain that we have in various regions, what we're going to see is an even bigger push to more localized manufacturing. And why do we want to do those things? Well, we obviously want to have shorter lead times and be more adaptive. And you're seeing all of those things in the supply chain with organizations migrating to personal protection manufacturing and other types of things like that. But there's going to be a bigger push to do a lot more localized manufacturing. And once we get through this dip, that's going to be a great opportunity for organizations to build things again, and at a much higher level and a much more effective level. That'll give us better quality and product consistency. It's going to help improve responsiveness to the changing customer demands. The other macro trend that we see as well is, as we get through the dip, and this is going to create a ton of new opportunities to help innovate and deliver value, a lot more speed and innovation. You're probably seeing this already, that your organizations may be doing things better, differently, faster, because of the different types of constraints that we have. And we also see a macro trend in growth in future startups and entrepreneurship. And so after this initial dip, there's going to be many new opportunities to deliver value and create from that point. All right. So, John, I'm going to turn it back to you. But really, this was the content that we wanted to share with you today, and certainly hope that it's helpful for everyone.
Great, thank you, John. Can you hear me, John?
Yes.
Excellent. We have our first question actually
Great.
that was emailed, so I'm gonna read it here. The individual has a number of restaurants focused on carry-out and delivery, and currently they're running daily specials at deeply discounted prices. Um, so long-term concern is, how do you get customers off these deep discounts? And I imagine this would also be important for other types of businesses and industries as well. So long-term concern is how to get customers off these deep discounts as we ease out of this, so that they can maintain the profit levels they were experiencing prior to this crisis. So this person experienced a similar circumstance in 2009, and it took them years to get their pricing back to normal.
Yeah, it's a challenging situation for sure. For sure. So I think um, one of the encouragements that we've suggested with a lot of our clients, very candidly, is don't try to discount your services. I mean, it's important to do that given the kind of current situation, but if you can avoid that, I think that's the primary thing. I mean, I think as soon as possible, you start to return your prices to what your traditional levels would be. And remember, if you're providing a service to folks, you are delivering value. We always encourage, what premium pricing can you offer for your clients, and so my initial reaction to that is, as soon as possible, start to get back to the pricing level that you would expect. Um, and it's going to take some time. If you've already offered discounts for your services, it's going to take some time for folks to get back to that, because they become conditioned to that. Just as a future thought, look to just offer the value and the bundle and the premium pricing that you can for your products and services. Probably not a great answer, but I hope that's helpful to the person that I asked.
Thank you, John. For those that have questions, you can raise your hand on the participant menu on the right-hand side, and we will unmute you. We received another question here through email, and so the question that you had talked about, which is about suppliers, and how can a company look for suppliers in the local region when maybe they were dependent upon suppliers either overseas or lowest cost around the United States. So how can we begin to transition to a more locally sourced business model?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thanks for sharing that. Ideally, I think it becomes the point now to kind of think about a ring network, if you will. So if you can imagine kind of a pebble dropping into a pond. The most immediate thing, I think, is if you're having challenges with source of supply from another region, reach out to colleagues about similar providers, and really look in your city first and then your state for similar providers of those types of products or services, and start to build those relationships, because those folks are going to need the business and they're going to want to deliver the value. And what that's going to end up doing is that's going to reduce your lead times to deliver those products and services. So I would really just use kind of your social media networks to kind of ask around and get some insight from folks. But think about your city, your state, and then the regions around you as providers of your products and services. So kind of those three rings is what I would suggest.
Okay, great. We have one more question. We'll probably end it here unless folks want to raise their hands, which is, John, you had mentioned about some strategies to help local providers. One of them that you mentioned was reducing your own pay time or invoice to pay time. Can you talk about that strategy as well as others that you might recommend to help these local suppliers?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. If you're providing services to an organization, that's a very legitimate request to say, hey, we might be on 45 or 60-day payment terms. Is it possible for you? Hey, we're providing you these services, right? And so you're talking to your customers now. Could you put would be okay if we did progress payments? That maybe what is happening is if we have a $5,000 invoice and it's due in 45 days, would you pay us $1,000 a week just to keep our cash flow moving? So that's one aspect of that. Is so if you're providing service to others, ask those questions of your customers. Would they be able to support you in that? And that'll help keep your cash flow moving. The other aspect of that is if you have suppliers that you are working with, the key thing to do is ask of them, what would be helpful to your suppliers. And so the way to kind of think about that from a mindset perspective is, hey, we want to be the customer of choice of our suppliers. So we're going to go out and ask them, how are you guys doing in regards to coronavirus? What can we do to help make business easy for you? Could we offer progress term payments? Could we pay you sooner? And I would imagine that that's going to be a very, very good conversation with your suppliers. So those would be those suggestions. Think about progress payments if you're a service provider, and then ask those same questions of your suppliers. Would that be helpful to them to improve their cash flow? So those would be a couple of suggestions, John.
Great, thank you. Thank you, John. Just wait about 5 or 10 seconds here in case anybody else has any questions or would like to raise their hand, and we can unmute. And if not, then we do thank you very much for attending today's session. We're really excited um, about having this participation. We really are excited about the effort that John put forward and about providing these very quick, short bites for individuals here in Northeast Ohio. So with that, I want to thank everybody again, and we will be sharing the recording once we edit out a little bit of the beginning piece of it. We started it a little bit early, and then we will also invite you to other sessions as well as we have them now planned every 2 weeks. So thank you so much, everybody.